In this video, we're going to be building upon something that we've already learned, and that is how to solve equations. Okay, we've talked about it before in terms of you need to cancel across the equal sign using the opposite function. We also talked about combining like terms across the equal sign, and the very first thing that you need to do is simplify on each side of the equal sign. We've done those with integers. Now we're doing them with fractions. So again, strategies for solving are basically the same, right? But now we're not doing integers, we're doing fractions. So I'm going to show you two different ways to solve when you have a fraction in that coefficient space. And remember, a coefficient is a number in front of a variable. So the first way we're going to do it is solving by multiplying by the reciprocal. And remember, a reciprocal is the fraction flipped, right? Okay, so when we have a mix of fractions and whole numbers, we have to put a 1 under the whole number. So that will always be step number 1. So I'll do that first. Okay, we are going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, and it's by the reciprocal of the fraction next to the variable. Because remember, we are eliminating everything next to the x, right? In this case, or whatever your variable is. If we do something to one side, we have to do it to the other. When you are canceling multiplication or division, you need to get something to equal 1, because 1 times anything, right, is itself. So we need it to become 1 times x. All right, so we are going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. Multiply by 3/2. Well, notice 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 3 is also 6. 6 over 6, or 6 divided by 6, is 1. So all those guys cross off, they cancel, and I get x equals, now it's multiplication, right? So we have to check for cross canceling. Well, 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 goes into 10 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. Over 1 times 1 is 1, and that simplifies down to 15. Now, just like any time you're solving, you could go ahead and substitute 15 in for x and make sure that both sides are equal. For time, I'm not going to do that right now, but you can always do that, and that's another thing that you'll want to practice so you remember to automatically do it during a test. Okay, so next one for B. Okay, so we need to check, can I simplify on both sides of the equal sign? Well, the left-hand side doesn't have like terms, so I can't do anything. And then 2 just has a single value, so there's nothing to combine there either. All right, a reminder, when we're solving and we're working across the equal sign, right? We go down order of operations when we simplify, and we go opposite of that when we're solving. And again, solving is when we are working across the equal sign. So that means I need to cancel the minus first, right? Because that is the opposite of order of operations. So to cancel minus 3, I need to add 3. And what I do to one side, I do to the other. So hopefully this is sounding pretty familiar. So 1/2 x equals 5. I have a whole number, so I need to put that over 1. Now I could have done that previously, but I usually find that having that 1 as I'm doing operations with adding and subtracting, it can potentially look a little confusing. So it's usually when I get down to having to have the fraction and the whole number interact that I put the 1 underneath. Okay, so we are multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1. If I do something to one side, I have to do it to the other. So times 2/1. Those cancel again, and I'm left with just the x. And x equals 10/1, which reduces down to 10. And that is your final answer. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and try C and D, and then turn it back on and go ahead and watch how I go through it and check your work and your answer. All right, so we are multiplying by the reciprocal again. So first step, notice I'm already ready to start dealing with that fraction. So I'm going to put a 1 under that 10. So I'm ready to go. I multiply both sides by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is 7/5 times -7/5. Remember that negative can go in the top, in the middle, or in the bottom. I'm keeping it in the top, just personal preference. Either way is totally fine. So that cancels, and I'm left with x equals. Now I'm ready to multiply, so I have to cross cancel first. Well, 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 10 twice, and now I'm ready to multiply across. So I get 2 times -7, which is -14, that's this right here, over 1 times 1. So fully simplified, I get x equals -14. All right, so for D, same thing. We are multiplying by the reciprocal. I need to put a 1 under the whole number. Now I multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which is 5/4 times 5/4. Those go away, and I'm left with B equals. Now I'm ready to cross cancel. These are good examples of if you just go and multiply across, your numbers are going to be bigger, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I do find for students that as numbers get bigger, their ability to see that something can be reduced and to see how to reduce it definitely reduces. No pun intended. So just reducing first, cross-canceling first, that's why you always see me do that. All right, so 1 and 5, right? There's nothing I can do. 4 goes into 4 one time, 4 goes into 12 3 times, and now I'm ready to multiply across. So 3 times 5 is 15, over 1 times 1 is 1, and that simplifies down to 15, and that is your final answer. All right, now for the second way that we're going to do this, we're going to use cross multiplication. This is a method that you have to learn because cross multiplication you're going to be using later this quarter and into future math classes. And so you have to learn how to cross multiply. So you may like the multiplying by the reciprocal, but you have to multiply using or solve using cross multiplication. So here's the introduction to it. Here's the opportunity to practice it. Sometimes on tests, you will be asked specifically to solve by using cross multiplication, so you have to know how to do it. All right, so on that note, we still have to put a 1 under the whole number. Now, cross multiplying, I'm going to do a rewrite here. This x is the same as 7/8 times x over 1. That means that I can rewrite it as 7x over 8 equals 14 over 1. Okay, now I am getting rid of division. This is 14 divided by 1 and 7x divided by 8. Well, I need to multiply both sides by 1, so times 1. times 1. Well, 14 times 1, right? Those guys cancel, so I'm left with 14. And then over here, I have 7x times 1. Well, I need to get rid of the 8 over here, so I need to multiply both sides by 8. So I am going to show that multiplication. Well, instead of having to show that I'm multiplying both sides by each number, I can just show that single calculation. So 1 times 7x gives me 7x. That equals 8 times 14. Right? So 8 times 14. That gives me 112. Now I need to cancel the multiplication, so I divide by 7. And I get x equals 112 over 7. Now, if it said to convert to a mixed number, you would need to do that. Or it needs to be fully simplified, right? So I would go ahead and do your 112 divided by 7 and see what you get. And in this case, you actually get 16. So either you fully simplify it, or if it says to write as a mixed number, you would need to go ahead and go through that process. All right, so let's try B. You can pause the video and try this one. Okay, so step 1, I put a 1 under the 12. Now I'm going to rewrite the left-hand side, so I end up with 4y over 5 equals 12 over 1. I have to multiply across the equal sign, so I know that it's multiply because there's an equal sign. If there was a multiplication symbol, then I would cross cancel. So make sure that you're clear with those differences. All right, I'm going to show an intermittent step. I'm doing 1 times 4y. That's the first thing. So 1 times 4y equals 5 times 12. 5 times 12. Well, that becomes 4y equals 60. And now I need to divide by 4, and I get that y equals 15. And that is my final answer. Okay, this time we have something that is like connected, right, to the term with the variable. So we need to think in terms of working across that equal sign. We have to do opposite order of operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 1 to both sides. That goes away and I get 11/12. And I'm going to go ahead and sneak that b up there so it's already rewritten. And then I get -11 over 1. All right, I am going to multiply across the equal sign. So I get 1 times 11b equals, multiply across the equal sign, I get 12 times -11. I used parentheses to show multiplication just because I find that that's less confusing than the dot when I'm dealing with negatives. So on the left, I get 11b equals 12 times -11, which is -132. Now I need to divide by 11 to get the b by itself. So b equals -12. And that is my final answer. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try D, and then turn it back on and see how you did. All right, I'm going to switch to orange here just to break up the monotony a little bit. Okay, so opposite order of operations. So I have to add 3 to both sides first. That goes away and I get 3/4. I'll put the y up top, equals 24 over 1. I have an equal sign, so I have to do cross multiplication. So this time I'm not going to show that in the intermittent step like what I did here, right, in the previous ones, you can go straight to just the multiplication. So 1 times 3y is 3y equals 4 times 24, and that gives me 96. Now I divide both sides by 3 to get the y by itself, and so I get y equals 32, and that is my final answer. So again, we learned multiply by the reciprocal to get the variable by itself, or use cross multiplication. Instructions may tell you to use one over the other. Don't run away from the one that you're most uncomfortable with. The only way to get comfortable is if you do the things that you don't like, right? So my suggestion, these two methods, right? If you prefer multiplying by the reciprocal, go ahead and do that first, but then do the same problem using cross multiplication, or you could do it the other way around when you're practicing, right? Do cross multiplication and then do the reciprocal and make sure that you're getting the same answer. That's the only way that you're going to start getting more comfortable with the thing that you feel least secure about right now.